Just a little bit of an introduction. My name's Richard Cartwright. I'm a Principal Teaching Fellow here at the Business School, and I've been with the University of Southampton now for over 5 years, and time has really flown during that period. And I must admit, probably as you found yourselves over the last sort of 3 or 4 months, time has just disappeared. I've really enjoyed my time at the Southampton Business School. Prior to that, I worked at another university for a couple of years, also in Southampton. And I worked prior to that at KPMG, so for a large accounting firm working in audit. What I want to take you through right now is a definition of accounting. Now, accounting is the process of identifying, measuring, communicating, and recording economic information to permit informed judgments and decisions by users of financial information. And this definition is provided by the American Accounting Association, but there's also very similar definitions provided by the Oxford Dictionary of Accounting and other resources like that. But I think that definition is a little bit flat. And what I'm going to encourage you to do after this session, and I think Miriam's going to put the link to this video into the chat box, I'm going to encourage you to watch the trailer for a film that we have a license to called False Assurance. Because I think the definition of accounting is much broader than, or far more emotive and vivid, I suppose, than the definition that we've seen on the previous page. For me, the definition of accounting is the language of business. It's about the interactions and the interplay between different professionals within business. And accounting gives you the skill set to be able to understand that language and be able to communicate effectively. It is also a method of assessing whether or not decisions have been effective. And this goes far beyond just the financial world and transactions denominated in financial terms. Over the latter part of this presentation, I'm going to talk about some of the key challenges that are facing the British economy. Clearly, we've got COVID to deal with, but we've got Brexit, we've got the fourth industrial revolution, and we've got climate change too. And accountants have a fundamental role in addressing all of those. But let's start with the real principles of what accounting is. Now, this is the logo of my professional institute, the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and Wales. It's one of the oldest professional bodies that governs accountants in the world. Now, I studied towards my ICAW qualification whilst I was working at KPMG. It was a really tough one. I didn't have an undergraduate or a master's degree in accounting, so I had a lot to learn. What I really like about this logo, the figurine Economia, is that she's pictured with 3 devices. And I think these characterize not only the role of accountants in the past, but also the role of accountants going forward too. So she's pictured with 3 devices, and in her top right hand, it's a rod. Underneath her, there's a rudder, and in her left hand, visual on our right hand side, she has a pair of dividers. And we're going to take each one of those in turn and examine what they mean in terms of the role of accounting and why I think that's relevant. The rod signifies command, and this is an indication that accountants should be trusted professionals, and when they provide advice, it should be heeded. It's not given flippantly. It's not advice that's sort of just based on a coin toss or a bit of hearsay. It's based on sound professional experience, and as a result, it should be authoritative. Not necessarily in all aspects, but certainly in the aspects of finance, in the aspects of measurement and so on. So that rod signifies command. The rudder, which you might think is quite an odd device to be pictured with, it signifies guidance and the notion that accountants are there to steer businesses and organizations through the long term. We're not there to provide advice that chops and changes. Yes, accountants need to move with the times, and if new evidence comes forward that means that advice should change, well, the course that they're steering should change too. But we're not here turning left and right, backwards and forwards. Accountants are there to provide stewardship and guidance and a clear sense of direction for businesses and organizations over a long period of time. And the final device that she's pictured with is the pair of dividers. And dividers in this context means measurement. And that's the key skill set of accountants. Now, historically, measurement has been relatively straightforward because we've just looked at things that are relatively easy to quantify in financial terms. In fact, the vast majority of transactions that accountants look at or have looked at in the past have already been denominated in financial terms. For instance, I don't know, I mean, if you're joining us from overseas, from China or East Asia, you've probably spent your day outside and you've probably bought something already and you've purchased something, and that transaction's quantified in financial terms already. So that's quite straightforward. However, accountants are having to develop a new skill set where they're increasingly having to value non-financial indicators in financial terms. And to give you an indication of what I mean here, well, let's think about the impact of climate change. How much is a ton of carbon dioxide impacting the environment? How do we quantify that? How do we measure it, first of all? How do we measure emissions, whether they're scope 1, 2, or 3 emissions? And then finally, how do we quantify the value of those emissions too, and the potential damage that they're causing? How do we put an effective price on that? So accountants have been involved in measurement for a long time, but that skill set and the type of things that they're having to measure is becoming increasingly diverse. But why do I think you should study accounting? Well, I think accountants are helping to save the world, and I'm not the only one to. Prince Charles, in his Accounting for Sustainability initiative, which has been running for the last 10 years, has championed the role of accountants in addressing major challenges that are affecting countries now. I'm going to take Britain as an example because, of course, Brexit is not something that's affecting all countries. But let's take a look at some of the 4 challenges that are facing Britain at the moment. Well, like the rest of the world, Britain is wrestling with a COVID-19 outbreak. Now, accountants, we're not virologists, we're not epidemiologists, we're not doctors or nurses, but actually we have a really important role in sustaining the economy whilst we're going through this pandemic. Accountants within businesses are desperately working very hard in order to update their cash flow forecasts and their business plans to respond to very different changes in demand. And this is not only just negative impacts, we've also seen some businesses do incredibly well. So we've seen the Amazons of the world, we've seen online retailers in a whole variety of different disciplines having to deal with real surges of demand, and accountants are there within business to map out those new business plans. Accountants within what we call accounting practice, and by this I mean companies of professional accounting firms, have also been trying to translate all these new government initiatives, all of the tax breaks, all of the government loans, all of the furlough schemes, into relatively straightforward advice for businesses to be able to adopt so they can use it. You might think that these government schemes would be relatively straightforward to adopt, but that's not the case. And actually, sometimes you need a trusted professional accountant to take all of those complex government policies, break them down into simple steps, and literally hold the hand of business through the application for those financing schemes, because otherwise businesses are just too busy dealing with the new world that we're operating in. I'll take Brexit now, something that I must admit most people in the UK have probably forgotten about, but the UK left the European Union last year, which disrupted 40 years of trading activities, which was effectively a seamless trading relationship that we had with 20 plus of our nearest neighbours. Now, we're currently still in a transition period, which means that that existing relationship is still there. But on the 31st of December, we're going to be moving away from that. And all of a sudden, we're going to have a whole bunch of new rules and regulations that are going to be in place. Now, for some businesses that trade overseas and trade with the United States or China or India already, some of these customs and tariff arrangements are not going to be that unusual. But for many businesses who only operate in the UK and perhaps with one or two European neighbours, these custom tariffs, these VAT, the new VAT regimes are going to be completely new. And accountants are having to reskill themselves in these disciplines and these subject areas in order to help businesses survive. Also, again, in terms of the disruption to business as usual, companies who may be subject to a tariff, which is a tax that you have to pay on an import or an export, will have to review their margins and the prices that they charge, because all of a sudden that 9% tariff figure or whatever may be agreed may disrupt and may destroy the profit margins that businesses are holding. Likewise, they might find that it takes longer for payments to be received by their customers, and it may take them longer to pay their suppliers if they're having to deal with new banking arrangements. And again, that might require them to assess their cash position. The bottom left-hand picture is an image that's trying to describe the new world that we're living in, not the post-COVID world, but the world of the fourth industrial revolution. And by this, I mean the use of AI, blockchain, advanced data analytics, and of course, the increased concerns that we have about cybersecurity. Now, accountants aren't Google. We're not computer programmers, or although a few of our accounting professionals are, but we are early adopters of technology. Accountants are used to using a lot of data, and the world is awash with data now. And it's interesting to see accountants pick up this technology and help the companies that they're working with use this technology to increase the security of their business, but also for accountants to understand their business better. You may have heard of a number of different corporate scandals that have been flying around the world recently. We've had Carillion in the UK. We've got Wildcard, which is an auditing scandal that's occurred in Germany recently. And accountants have been criticized for not interrogating data sufficiently. And the use of blockchain and the use of artificial intelligence is an incredibly useful tool for us to be able to try and tackle this huge quantity of data that we have present to us. And then finally, if that wasn't enough, accountants, I think, are truly trying to help save the world. And by this, I mean in helping the world achieve the UN goals for sustainable development. Now, the UN goals for sustainable development are 17 goals that were adopted by the UN, which are trying to achieve a number of different things by the year 2030. And I think accountants have a fundamental role. You might think it's a little strange. How can accountants possibly address climate change? How can accountants ensure that life underwater or the quality of life underwater is improved? But they do have a role. Accountants, the word accountant derives from the word accountability. Accountants have a key role in holding governments who are promised to help accomplish these goals to account. Accountants are important in ensuring that there is strong institutions around the world in terms of government authorities, tax authorities, and accountants are fundamental too in trying to make sure that bribery and corruption is stamped out wherever possible to ensure that the world's taxpayers, the world's normal citizens, aren't being ripped off by those in positions of power. Using those using the tax receipts generated by government is one way for us to be able to help achieve some of these goals. But the other way is in terms of developing that skill set of measurement to measure new things. How do you measure climate change? Well, we can look at the quantity of CO2 being emitted from the planet, and we can try and hold businesses to account for the level of emissions that they have. But we need someone to interrogate that data. We need someone to go in and audit that information in order to ensure that businesses, when they say that they're emitting 1 million tons of CO2, that they actually are only emitting 1 million tons of CO2 rather than 2 million or 3 million. And accountants and auditors are going to be really useful professionals in going into those businesses to make sure that their paperwork in respect to CO2 emissions is upright and forthcoming, as well as that broader role in making sure that governments are achieving those goals, and that when they are saying that they've made progress to achieving those goals, that they truly have. So I think accountants and accounting is a really, really interesting career for you to choose. One of the wonderful things about studying accounting and management is that you're keeping your horizons open. You'll get a blend of different modules that you'll get, some very financy and some highly related to accounting, but others far more far broader in the disciplines of management, marketing, and so on. And you'll be able to further your the flexibility of your degree with the type of option modules that you intend to cover. So that's a bit of a whistle-stop tour through the world, or a small bit of the world of accounting. I hope you've enjoyed that. If you do have any questions, then please do throw them across to me via the chat function. But otherwise, I'm going to pass back to Rob and the rest of the colleagues on the call, who are going to take us through the rest of the presentation.
Wonderful, Richard. Thank you very much for giving your insights here and painting accountants as a kind of quasi superheroes, which of course they absolutely are. Fascinating lecture there. Maggie, if you'd like to join us on the call and perhaps introduce yourself as well, that would be fantastic.
Hello, I'm Maggie Zhang. I'm the program leader of MSc Accounting and Management. It's a great pleasure to attend the web seminar and answer your questions.
Absolutely. So I can already see that some questions are coming through in the chat. Please do keep them coming. We're going to take those in just a minute. And first of all, I suspect that lots of people on this call are wondering the question that's on the screen here, which I'm going to put to you, Maggie, which is, you spend a lot of time, and your predecessor spent a lot of time, curating this degree to make it sort of what it is today. So what do you think that makes the MSc Accounting and Management so exceptional as a degree program?
Thanks for your questions. At the Russell Group universities, we deliver the research-informed teaching. It means that as a student, you will receive the cutting-edge views in accounting and management. And you are being taught by the expert in the field, just like Richard. And it means that you have a state-of-the-art view of the topics being studied. And all this makes the MSc Accounting and Management program exceptional. Yeah, thanks.
I think it's really worth sort of pointing out, particularly for those people in our audience that maybe aren't familiar with the idea of what is a Russell Group sort of education and what Russell Group means. Richard, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. So the Russell Group is sort of a prestigious group of research-intensive universities within the UK. What's important about the University of Southampton as part of the Russell Group, I think, is the diversity of staff that we have within the accounting group. So we have something like 20 members of staff within the accounting group. We have a number of PhD students too, and those staff come from a whole variety of different backgrounds. So colleagues like my colleague Maggie, she's a researcher. She spent her time working in accounting research, and she brings that aspect of things to the fore in front of her class. Myself, I don't have a PhD. I don't have a doctorate, but I spent my time training in accounting practice, and that's where I sort of bring what I call enterprise-led teaching too. So the nice thing about Russell Group universities, and Southampton especially, is you've got colleagues from all around the world, but from all backgrounds too. So you'll have those who have spent their entire career in academia in terms of delivering world-class research, and you'll also have those colleagues who've spent their careers or much of their careers working in accounting practice. And it's that diversity of standpoint which I think is really strong and that you won't get in all institutions.
I think that's a really great point. So whilst we deliver our students this research-informed kind of cutting-edge education, which they can then take into their first roles after graduating, there's also very much this practical side that we deliver to our students through people like Richard. Maggie, I suppose I'm the type of person who likes theory, because I like to know what is happening underneath the bonnet, so to speak. But I also like to use my hands and do practical things as well. And that's how I learn best. And I'm sure there are many people who are the same as me. How do we do this as part of this degree program? How do we introduce that?
Rob, thanks for your questions. Actually, we believe in the experimental learnings. It means that as a student, you won't just receive the traditional exams or the essays on this degree. We would like to assess you on the real problem solving. So it means that, for example, you will be asked to work in a team on the real life project. And as the member in the team, you will have the team members who are the classmates with different background and with different experience. So during the process, you can practice your soft skills, like the communications and teamwork. And all of these can help you to apply the theories to practice and help you to solve the real life project and problems.
And I think that's a really important point to make. I think sometimes people view accountants as bean counters and sort of these people that are kept in the back somewhere who don't really like talking to people. That's really not the case. Yes, understanding the financial side and the quantitative side to accounting is really important. But actually, what's becoming increasingly important now, especially as technology is taking away some of that relatively straightforward work as it's becoming automated, is the ability to translate what those quantitative factors mean. And so the soft skills that are required to sort of teach accounting to non-accountants to help translate that to other people is really important. So whilst you're at an institution, and again, one of the main reasons to come to a place like Southampton is everything that we have going on within the Students' Union, the opportunity to get involved in lots of different clubs and societies, even in this crazy world in an online context. Get involved in the Students' Union, participate in as much additional stuff as you possibly can, because all of those additional skills that you're going to generate whilst you're at university are really important in adding to the theoretical stuff that you cover in class.
I think it's worth also picking up on the importance of what happens after graduation. So we, within the school, obviously want to hold the hands of our students in that transition. Richard, maybe you can speak to this. We would find that many of our students, or all of our students in fact, are also engaging with networking with industry professionals as they go through the degree. Do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So I like to call it sort of co-curricular activities. So you've got your stuff in the classroom, which is your lectures, your seminars, your assessments. Then you've got the fun stuff that you're going to be doing in the Students' Union, joining different clubs and societies. But alongside that, you've got these sort of co-curricular activities. And at Southampton, we've got an initiative called Mind the Gap. It's a pretty rubbish accounting pun, but it's a name of a group which hosts a number of different events, which allow students to network and meet with industry professionals throughout their time in a more social setting. So there's no assessment associated with this. It's just sort of a voluntary opportunity. So in a physical sense, we were hosting events which were pizza evenings where we'd invite a local accounting practice in to talk about what they've been doing. In the online setting, I've been hosting what I call coronavirus conversations with local professionals, where we've been exploring the impact of the crisis on their business. And that's been really interesting, because I think in the media, we sort of see that everything's doom and gloom, and we're thinking about businesses that have been adversely affected. And that's true, though some of them have. But I've had some interesting conversations, one with a very new partner at Deloitte who made partner whilst in lockdown, and another individual who worked for an online cycling retailer called Wiggle, which has the level of their business has absolutely exploded during lockdown. So we're keen wherever possible to try and contextualize your learning, to make sure that you're not just studying the stuff that's in the textbooks, that this is brought to life by working with different professionals.
Absolutely true. I think what I'll ask us to do is maybe turn off the webcams, because to retain the sound quality for a second, everyone. I think it's also worth noting for our audience members how important we find graduation rates and how high these are after students finish with us. So what we experience on our postgraduate programs is approximately a 92% graduation rate, with that number of people moving into full-time employment or further education within 6 months, which is exceptionally high. Now, some of the reasons are obviously in line with our education and everything that we do to support students as they go through their degree. But it also has to be flagged up the importance that we put forward to careers and career support. And you'll be pleased to know that on the university campus, we have a dedicated support function. They provide, for instance, one-to-one coaching with our students in getting ready for interviews. They help with CV writing, and they also organize 3 careers fairs on campus every year. Of course, that hasn't been possible this year in its entirety, and so we've transitioned into virtual job fairs, and students have had the opportunity, for instance, to liaise with companies, 100 different companies, all in different countries across the world, and that's something that we're going to continue to invest in. You'll also be pleased to know, perhaps, that our alumni, so people who have finished with us their degrees, have access to this kind of support for 5 years after graduating. And this is really important, because some of our graduates are coming back to us after 2 or 3 years in their role and saying, well, I'm ready to move into my next role. Can I help? Can I get some help with this? Of which, obviously, we provide.
And Rob, I was going to just take over and sort of say that, writing references and sort of seeing students enter the workplace is a real joy. It might seem like an odd activity to really like, but I love seeing students progress in their careers. They add me on LinkedIn, and it's really interesting to see their job roles progress, and some at such a dramatic pace too. And I think it's testament to the fact that the university has such a great reputation, that we have so many people in employment. And what's been really a real delight to see this year, with everything that's going on, is how many people are still making it into the workplace. And crucially, I've had a couple of master's students that I'm supervising their dissertations on this summer, and a few of them have got jobs in the UK. I know many students, want to spend their time in the UK, and then probably want to go back home to wherever they may have joined us from, and that's absolutely brilliant. But the nice thing too is that you can make it in the UK, and I've got some very close colleagues of mine at KPMG who are University of Southampton graduates who came from overseas for an undergraduate or a master's course, and have made really, really successful careers in the UK. And that's not just something that was happening 10 years ago. I've been writing references for a few students this summer who've joined us from overseas for a master's program, and they're starting work in September in the UK afterwards, which is just an absolute delight.
So fulfilling, isn't it? It's so fulfilling when your students move into roles, particularly in times like now, and you think, wow, that's a really great role, and you're a really great fit for that. And they thank you for being able to make that happen, I think.
Yeah.
So some of the students on the call, prospective students on the call, might also be budding entrepreneurs. And I think that's worth raising up, that the business school has this kind of entrepreneurial flair in its DNA, where we like our students to have big ideas, and we encourage that through the type of activities that we do, the types of extracurricular activities that we encourage and support and facilitate. And I think one of the most notable ones of these is our Future World, which is an entrepreneurial business incubator, where we bring together students with academic staff and entrepreneurs to take seedlings of ideas and try and develop them or scale them or get funding for them. So something that we try and encourage is for our students to take part in competitions. And quite often our students will go off and represent the university, represent themselves, and engage in kind of entrepreneurial activity. I don't know if you want to talk to that at all, Richard, if you have any examples.
Yeah, I mean, I must admit, it's one of these, it's something that I'm very sad about. Is that I don't feel that I really have an entrepreneurial bone in my body. My parents just weren't very good at inspiring that sort of thing in me. But when I see students who are already running their own businesses whilst at university, I'm in complete awe of them, to be honest. And we do have a really strong entrepreneurial culture within the university. And you've talked about Future Worlds and the Dragon's Den that they host, but we also have a variety of different societies, one called Enactus, one curiously called Fish on Toast. And all of those are sort of operating in the entrepreneurial space. And we have a whole variety of different businesses that are in different stages of startup. And the university has an excellent track record in supporting those. So if you do have that sort of entrepreneurial flair, you'll be right at home at University in Southampton. And again, this is something that happens face to face, but the support also happens online. There's coaching and mentoring available from investors and business angels through the Future World schemes, and a whole variety of online lectures and online collaboration working for the other societies too.
Absolutely. So whilst as Director of Internationalisation, I've been the one that posed the question, what makes the degree programme exceptional? It's actually something that I'm asked very regularly when I give talks all over the world. And I think over time, I've been allowed to develop my view, which is quite simple. And it's something that, Richard, you've already alluded to as we've gone through the presentation. And that's what makes the degree exceptional, is the people that make up the business school. And by this, I mean both the professors, the lecturers, and the students themselves. We've been able to curate this kind of quasi-melting pot where we bring together people from all over the world with different backgrounds, different skill sets, different experiences, and we ask them to generate the big ideas of the future. And I think we have this really great track record of being strong in this regard. And it's really great to see, as you've already mentioned, Richard, how our students go forward in their careers afterwards, and how that's testimony to the type of work that we do at the university.